Hey friends. Um, we have a big change coming up here in the Chavez Holloway household because we are tomorrow morning going to become the proud owners of a Bichon Frisée, which is a little white dog, incredibly cute. And we're going to have a dog in our lives. And I have no idea. I've had dogs when I was a kid, which is when you're not really responsible for the dogs. But I have not had one in my adult life, not for years, not since I was a kid, or maybe in my 20s, early 20s, maybe. And the way we got to deciding finally to actually go ahead and do this, it's been an interesting journey, particularly for me, because I think I had the most resistance. But I also, over the last several weeks, I'd say maybe a month or so, I've had a sense, I've had this just an instinct, or because my wife was pushing for a dog for a while, and I was kind of the holdout. I was kind of like digging my heels in, saying no. And at some point, I realized, I'm gonna lose this battle, and I probably even want to lose this battle on some level. And I just allowed myself to let go a little bit. And I don't know where that is going to lead us. It's going to be an adventure, having a creature in the house that needs as much attention as a dog does. It's going to be a change for me as the one who stays home most days. And having, over the last month or so, really sort of changed from a kind of an entrenched resistance position to a position of acceptance, and more than acceptance. We've met this dog. He's the cutest little dog you've ever encountered. And having let myself kind of like be persuaded, be moved, I have to say, has really, there's a heart opening thing that happens. It's not quite like having a baby, but it's something like that. It's this space of love, a space of service. I just have a sense that this is going to increase love in our house. And I've been reflecting on something recently, because many of my posts for the last, couple of months at least, I've had a fair amount of focus on my daughter and her violin practice. And I read a book a little over a month ago when I had surgery up in Canada. I plowed through an entire book in 3 days' time, and came back and started to implement some of these changes in the practice. And putting my focus there, I think about that A friend of mine asked me today, the parent of one of my daughter's friends asked me, how do you get Annalise to practice so much? I said, hey, by waking up every single morning and practicing with her. That's how you do it. And I also told him, I said, the most important thing for me is to let go of my own agenda around her musical life, because then I can just offer. And it doesn't mean that we don't create a container. We create the container and we're rigorous about the container, but the container isn't in service of my agenda. The container is in service of her. And I think about that as an image or as a template for understanding almost all relationships in a way. You put a container around things, around interactions, around values, and then you serve them in the highest way you can. Then you get out of the way and you try and serve that deep value. And it's really easy for me to, I don't know if it's easy for me to do that if from a kind of pure place, because I feel like my agenda still does get in the way some. But something like music, which I've spent my entire life studying and working with and being around, I have an appreciation of it, and therefore an ability, a willingness, a natural willingness to serve music. And a dog is almost like its own. I think I'm going to learn some lessons about this, but I feel like it's almost like its own domain of life. It's its own being, but it's also, it puts a container around our life in a way, to have another dependent being in our household. There's going to be service there. And there's almost nothing more rewarding, more fulfilling, almost nothing that puts me more deeply at peace than going into that place of service and knowing. So it sort of helps me know a purpose or a function, a role. And what I was saying a minute ago about life kind of coming in chapters, I know that I sense another chapter sort of on the horizon. I sense something coming from me that's maybe a little bit more professionally oriented, a little bit more, can't tell what it is yet, but I just feel the energy of it. And I am still in surrender. I'm still working to be in surrender to this chapter of my life. And the chapter of music practice with my daughter, it's not my whole life, but it's an important part of my life. And my focus has been there for, a while now. Again, not exclusively, but enough that it feels like a defining element of this chapter of my life. And now we're letting another element in, and I know it's going to define the next chapter, or at least help define. Having a dog it'll be different. Things will be different starting tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. So, in some ways, I'm marking this moment to celebrate the start of that chapter, to observe the function of the container as creating a defined area of service, and to remind myself that accepting the chapter that we're in, accepting this chapter right now, some chapters it's like, I hope this chapter never ends. Other chapters it's like, I can't wait to be done with this chapter. But whatever the case may be, genuinely deciding to be here, to be okay with being here, to be connected to this moment, to be connected to spirit, to be connected to the flow of time at this moment, to be connected to all our own karma and background, not to avoid any of it. That's how you enjoy the chapter, and that's how you get through the ones that are unpleasant. The ones that are joyous, they're easy. But the ones that are difficult, that's how you get through them, is by surrendering to what's here. Letting it be. Doesn't mean we're not trying to change it, we're just accepting what is before we try to change anything. So, I'm invoking that as we head into a massive chapter shift. So, that's where I am today, folks. Thanks for watching. I appreciate you. Take care. I'll see you soon.